A short video to go into more detail about keyboard shortcuts and mouse manipulation. So this video, as already mentioned, is mainly for novices or really new users. So the goal of my channel is to try to take you directly to practical projects. So of course, when learning any software, there is a learning curve. As we said last time, you need to start with individual parts without dependencies. Then work on projects with a few purchase parts. Then move on to more complex projects with subassemblies and dependencies between parts. Mastery of the software will come automatically with practice. I'm really a believer in learning by doing, so the more time you invest in experimenting, and especially trying to apply it to your own projects, the more you'll master the software. So, in my content, it's true that I move quite quickly through things. There are many things that seem obvious. And many people have pointed out that I haven't detailed enough how to use the mouse and keyboard. They get the impression I'm using keyboard shortcuts or all sorts of secret manipulations. That's not the case because FreeCAD is a very simple software with actually few things to know. And few keyboard shortcuts, so today we're going to make a video more for beginners. Let's say for those who are really discovering the subject and still struggling a bit with it. So those who already have some mastery, I think this will quickly bore you, so leave a comment to say you already master this and like the video, but for those who have just arrived on the subject and are really just starting now and have never touched FreeCAD, maybe this will help you feel more comfortable with the subject. So let's get started. A short video to go into more detail about keyboard shortcuts and mouse manipulation. So this video, as already said, is aimed more at novices or really new users who are completely new to the software. So we find ourselves in FreeCAD with the startup display. Let's open a new file to start. You'll notice, especially in my tutorials, you have a gray area here. That appears when I'm working. It's precisely to show you what I'm doing with my mouse and keyboard. Left click appears here. Right click appears here. If I turn the mouse wheel, you see it appears there. If I press the middle button, it appears like this. If I press two buttons at the same time, it appears like this. So actually, all the information is already there. I just need to explain things to you. The same goes for the keyboard. If I press space, we see it appears. Shift appears like this next to the mouse and Control like that, so we'll see later for selections. So these are just the little helps in the videos. Now regarding manipulations and preferences to choose. I work with the standard configuration called CAD by FreeCAD. So if you want to know more, I still invite you to look at the documentation. FreeCAD is very well done. You go to help user documentation and it takes you directly to the help on the FreeCAD wiki. There you'll find a phenomenal amount of information, so I really encourage you to look at it. Sometimes it's a bit messy, but it's continuously updated, which is normal, as FreeCAD is under continuous development. So it's always evolving. There are always new things coming along with new functionalities. Then sometimes be careful, there's also outdated information that was linked to things from past versions of the software, but generally it's always very helpful. Regarding this interface topic, you can see that we find information directly here. So we'll go here to this article on mouse navigation. There you have the details of how operations work with the mouse depending on the navigation mode you choose. So if you were used to Blender before, you could select the Blender mode in this way. You can keep the reflexes you acquired within Blender. The classic mode in FreeCAD is the CAD navigation mode, where you click the left button to select. Press the middle button to shift left and right. To zoom, you turn the wheel forward and backward. And to rotate the piece in all directions, which I like to do a bit too much, apparently. You press the middle button and one of the two buttons at the same time to rotate. So regarding the mouse, these are the only things you need to know. There are other modes like gesture, Maya gesture, open cascade. Actually, it depends on TinkerCAD. If you were used to TinkerCAD, there's even a mode for working with the touchpad. I've never tried that. It seems quite laborious to use FreeCAD just with the touchpad. But apparently some people do it, so it's a possibility. That's up to you. I work with the standard mode, which is CAD navigation. So that's what I'm going to show you in this video, and you can select another mode. To select this mode, simply down here, there's a small setting where you can choose Blender gesture. CAD, so I stay on CAD. Now to do some very simple manipulations. I suggest once again to take the part design workbench. We're going to create a body. So you click with the left button on the create body icon, and there it is. I haven't saved files yet, so for now it's called unnamed, and then we have within the file here with it the reference system that's grayed out. So already just with the reference system we can make manipulation. You also always have the orientation cube here to help you align yourself in different directions. But if we work with the mouse, we can zoom in and out for rotation. I always use middle and right button, and then you can gently rotate around our reference point. For selection, it's simply the left button, so you click and it's selected. If you want to select different things at the same time when you're in three-dimensional space, press Ctrl and click again, and there we've selected both planes. Select the third plane again. Now all three are selected. It's useless here, but just to show you. There's a small subtlety here. Maybe the main thing that can sometimes be a bit confusing is that if we work in a sketch, so let's create one to create a sketch. We click on the plane, this one Z doesn't matter, and there we create a sketch. which will be in this plane and then in sketch mode. There, the small difference is that to select different elements. We won't use the Control key, but we'll use the Shift key. So that's the small thing to remember. So here I'll give you a small example. Make a small segment here. And then another small segment here. So if I want to select these 2 points to make them coincident, I click on the first one, press Shift, click on the second one, and then we apply the coincidence constraint. And now they are linked. So that's the general principle in the Sketcher workbench. Multiple selection is always done by clicking on objects while holding down the Shift key. If I make another segment here deliberately askew and now I want to say they should be parallel. These two, so I click on the first one, shift the second one, parallel constraint. There you go. So in the Sketcher workbench, you already know almost everything. So we're just going to close this sketch, so we start again vertex, so endpoint of the segment. Of the other segment while pressing Shift, coincidence, and then we make another segment. The other segment by pressing Shift, then we'll do another segment, which will position you directly with just an automatic assistance of 2 constraints from the start. The tab creates the appropriate constraint for you. So now we have a closed sketch like this. See? We find our sketch that is in the YZ plane. Sorry, I've done a bit of rotation maybe. Unnecessary and disturbing. And now once we're in 3D space to select multiple elements, we won't use the Shift key anymore, but we'll use Control. See, we have selected 2 segments, so otherwise another shortcut I use, so at the keyboard shortcut level. I use quite well in FreeCAD. There are very few keyboard shortcuts. The one I use often is the spacebar. So to select an element in the construction tree, you press space. And that allows you to manage the display, so you see now. In FreeCAD, you can also have this new possibility of just clicking on the little eye. You see it, you don't see it, you don't see it. But you can do the same with the full spacebar. You see it, you don't see it, you don't see it. So that's very simple. Otherwise, so we've seen mouse manipulation, rotation, zoom, selection, and if we want to do an offset, we can move the object out of our view. So when you're a beginner, it's true that you can get lost all of a sudden. You don't see anything anymore. There's a small keyboard shortcut that's very useful. It's VF, which actually brings what you have in your file back to the center of the image. So when you're completely lost because you've zoomed out or mega zoomed, and then you can't see anything precise anymore, VF and it comes back. You don't have to press VF. You find this function fit just here, so we're all lost. It comes back exactly the same. So you find yourself again. So a nice little practical thing. Then at the selection level. In 3D, what can we do, for example? So here we could extrude this sketch. It creates our volume. We won't do that. We'll change workshop once. We'll take the part workshop, and here we'll select two edges. So edge 1, edge 2 with the control key. Both are selected, and we'll do an extrusion along the x-axis because my sketch is on 1. The UZ plane, so a small vertical extrusion. I didn't want to do that. So it's selected. The whole sketch. We delete that, so if there's something we don't want, we just click in the construction tree, press the delete. To delete it, often when you apply an operation, the sketch is hidden so you don't end up with 15,000 sketches in our 3D space, so it's still there, you just need to make it reappear. So I wanted to show you multiple selection in 3D space, so we are in it. The part workshop. There's a very practical tool. It's the shape builder which allows you to select very specific items, and from the selected items create new ones. For example, you can create an edge from vertices. So let's say we select the vertex here. It's very small, it's a bit delicate and attentive here, and we press Ctrl 2. Select the other vertex, so we've selected two vertices, and then we press 8, and there it created an edge between these two vertices. So if you have trouble selecting, there's now a small novelty in FreeCAD, one that you can select this mode here, which allows you to say, see, I would like to select only vertices, so you won't be able to select anything else but vertices, which before it was sometimes confusing whether you had selected an edge or a vertex. It was a bit complicated, so they've done this. It's very practical and now in class. You can select only edges, only segments. You can select only segments, not the vertex. You can select faces or the normal mode from before. So you choose what you want to select. So now I'm rotating my model. So if we stay with this tool now, we can easily create a face between these three edges. So how does it work? We take our tool again, we'll make a face from these three edges, plan a face, so select the first one, control the second, the third. And there, you see in the construction tree, the face has appeared. So there, and our three elements. So here it's with the part workshop. So we reload down to the lowest level of the software where we have access to each element in detail. It's maybe not something that's you when you're a beginner, but it was to show you an example of selection. So there you go. If we go back more. Classically, with the part design workshop, where we make an extrusion, the other keyboard shortcuts that I use from time to time are for display modes, notably wireframe mode when we're going to select the vertex on the other side of the cube like this. We don't need to turn it to. Get it? I switch to wireframe mode, and there I can select my vertex here. And this vertex here, and let's say we could create a segment, an edge between these two vertices. There you go a little bit. I think that's all I wanted to explain. Tell me if there are still things that are unclear to you. So for display modes, it's V3 for wireframe, the 7 for the classic mode, but if it's the mode where you just have shading, I think it's called. So you don't have the edges, you only see the faces and the shadows. And then there are modes I never use. So the mode where it's just vertices with just points, mode 1. I think it's the normal mode. It's like 7, V5. I think you don't have the shadows, and V4 is a bizarre mode I've never used. So there you go. I hope that's a bit clearer for you. I'll stop rotating the piece. It might be a bit disturbing. I like to think while manipulating. My piece is in all directions, so there you go. Let's call it my little quirk. Otherwise, for selections, we can also have multiple selections within the construction tree if we create another body. Let's say with it. I made a mistake because I didn't select a plane from my sketch, so if I do a simple bar, we end up with two different bodies. So if you want to manipulate them, the principle of Nethel. Selection is the same. You can select both at the same time. Control click Control, and then you'll be able to apply an operation that concerns these two bodies, for example, a Boolean operation. There you go. So if I want to merge these two elements, how does it work? Button will first position this. Second body, so right click on this one, transform, I can move it around. Simply and basically, there you go with the transformation tool. It's something I use a lot, so it's very practical for already positioning our elements. So right click, transform, and we switch to Fusion. Boolean operation, we switch to the part workshop. So we select the first rule. Body, control, the second body, and here we make a fusion. There you go. And then we end up with a body called fusion, which is the fusion of the two previous bodies. So we find them hidden in there that you can move again as you wish. So there you have it. I'd say that's about it for mouse and keyboard manipulations. So you see, it's quite simple in the end from this point of view. The main difficulty is perhaps the precision required. You really need to be precise with elements, especially when working with vertices. You need to be very, very precise about what you're doing. So if things don't go as planned, take a breath. Check that you've indeed selected the elements you thought you had selected. There's a little help that's quite practical when you select an element. Its name appears. Here at the bottom. So if you take this face you see at the bottom left, even fusion face 3. If you select the edge there, you see, you know the name of the elements on which you are. So there, if you want to take the vertex. I'm on the face, I'm on the edge, and then hop. Suddenly at vertex 2. So then you know you're on it. So that didn't exist in the previous version. Now, so there you go. I never paid attention. But now it's very practical. It actually lets you know if you're on an edge or a vertex. So that can be helpful too. So there you go. I hope that helps. If you have any more questions, you'll go into more detail. Well, I'll repeat myself once again. Go check out the online help. There are plenty of resources. I see there are, for example, information if you're migrating from another CAD like SolidWorks, which I've used in the past. There seems to be a correspondence table between the ribbon functions, the main functions, and the functions of the part design workbench, for example. So don't hesitate to dig into this documentation. It's the most useful. And regarding navigation, I hope these few additional pieces of information will help you feel more at ease with the videos I've already made. It's not always easy to make tutorials because some of you are much more advanced than others. So I can't go into infinite detail for every manipulation I do. For all my tutorials, it would take too much time. Secondly, it would bore, I think, a good part of the subscribers. And thirdly, well, it's just impossible. It takes too much time and we get lost in the details. So I prefer to give you some tips. The goal is for you to become independent. After all, you need to start with the basics. So if I haven't been clear, and you can't manage to replicate what I've done because I haven't explained things well, that's a pity too. So that's why I made this video on mouse manipulation and keyboard shortcuts now. I hope it gives you some extra info on how I work with FreeCAD. Nothing special. I really use the software in a totally standard way. And as mentioned, compared to other software like Blender, I find FreeCAD is actually very simple from this perspective. There are many fewer keyboard shortcuts to remember, you know. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. If you liked the video, then like it. Leave your feedback in the comments. It's always interesting. And if not, then see you next time. Thanks.